We do
Yeah, he is also, Brandon has also said he has decided how to respond to the attack in
start
Jordan.
with the breaking news. Here's President Biden speaking to reporters at the White House just moments ago.
Yes. I do hold response.
I don't understand why they always have to do this next to the goddamn helicopter, man. Why? I genuinely don't know why they all, like, is there a reason? Is there an actual fucking reason? This is one thing in all my years of political commentary and coverage. I have never understood why we always do this. No, this is not a Joe Biden specific thing. Chat. This is not only exclusive to Joseph Robinette Brandon. Donald Trump did this as well. I think it's just like, it's very weird. It's very weird that they just like basically do these kinds of impromptu press briefings right next to the goddamn helicopter, and it's impossible to fucking hear this dying old fool, okay? Shit. Because he never does a press conference, so this is the only time press can ask him a question. Trump did more press than Biden does. His staff doesn't let him. Trump did more press than Biden did, but he also still did the helicopter thing. I just think that it should be not allowed. It is my least favorite thing that is commonplace. I just despise it.
I'm responsible in the sense that they're supplying the weapons to the people who did it. We'll have that discussion.
This could be one of the most consequential decisions of Joe Biden's presidency so far. I want to go straight to Arlette Saenz at the White House. Arlette, you were one of the reporters there talking to the president.
I'm curious at what point you would say some sort of military response is warranted. I don't know. I am a firm believer in de-escalation and diplomacy. So there are very few. No. I understand that. I think your question is valid. I think that there are very few instances where like military escalation is not warranted. I think military action is fine as long as it is a defensive posture. That's an understandable thing, right? You're not supposed to fucking sit back and expect the larger superpower to come and destroy you, or even the smaller power to come and attack you. But I think that, like, we have I think that that's it. It's like the offensive capabilities, in my opinion, are oftentimes just completely unacceptable. Does that make sense? Now, having said that, there are obvious exceptions to this rule, but that would be like state-on-state violence, or that would be like a Hitler-style situation. You know what I mean? Now, if we're making a comparison in modern day to a Hitler-style situation or a state engaging in this sort of thing, I don't know. I just like Israel comes to mind, or Saudi Arabia comes to mind with its actions in Yemen, or UAE comes to mind with its actions in Yemen. But I don't believe in like physically and forcibly bringing them to heel in that situation either. You know what I mean? Russia is another example as well. But like Ukraine's defensive posturing is totally valid. You know what I mean? Like, I've said this since day one, that yes, Ukraine, of course, has a right, a duty, and a moral responsibility to defend itself. Okay? Like, yeah, no shit. But that is a defensive posture. So I don't know. There are instances where like military action is understandable, but in many of the cases where America is involved, because it is the global hegemonic superpower that dominates the entire planet, that has its fingers in everything that's going on, I feel like you gave up on Ukraine aid, so I think you would give up on aiding other countries. No. I said that Ukrainian aid should be conditional. I think that part of the reason why Ukraine continues to fight is because the United States of America does not tell them, like, okay, we have to make sure that we avoid further conflict that will end up killing a shit ton more people. And by that, it's not even conditional. It's more so saying, like, I think that the United States of America controls what level, like what bandwidth Ukraine has. This is true. It doesn't matter if you disagree with me or not. It doesn't matter what you say about like Ukrainians and their own autonomy and their own personal beliefs and their own personal expectations. If Ukrainian needs were actually the emphasis in this conversation, then there would be a no-fly zone over Ukraine that is implemented and controlled by NATO forces, right? But no such thing exists. It doesn't exist because obviously there are limitations to what kind of help we will offer Ukraine. And our motivations has been quite clear. As far as Ukraine goes, our motivations here in the United States of America have been quite clear since the beginning. It is to just, tell Ukraine, oh, we're going to do everything. We're going to do everything for you. We're going to do everything for you. Trust me. Just keep going. Keep fighting. Keep fighting. Keep fighting. Keep fighting. And then not really doing, not really offering Ukraine the help it wanted. And basically writing it off as though this is a phenomenal, this was a phenomenal return on investment. We pulled, and I said this back then as well, we pulled the same shit that we did with the Kurds. America does this all the time. Okay? The United States of America does this all the time. If you were to think that the United States of America actually has a consistent moral position and isn't just simply using sometimes righteous causes for their own ends, okay, because Ukraine defending itself is a righteous cause, is a just cause, is the moral one, okay, but America's involvement and America's interest in Ukraine is not a righteous cause, no matter how hard they try to present it that way. But America consistently claiming, like, we got your back, don't worry about it, do your thing, okay, do your thing, was genuinely devastating for Ukraine. It just like it heated up the conflict further, and Russia took over even more territory as a consequence. In that they were able to like successfully push into eastern territories and plant themselves there. Are you saying it is not righteous because it's not enough? Wait, what? No. Ukrainians and their emancipatory needs are just. America's interest in the continuation of funneling weapons or funding Ukrainian defense is not for just reasons. Okay? What do I mean by this? If their goal was truly to avoid as many, if their goal was to genuinely stop the bleeding, okay, stop the harm, stop Ukrainians from dying en masse, then they would do everything they can to immediately come to the table and try to pressure the parties that they can to specifically put forward a ceasefire and contemplate how a peaceful cessation of hostilities can begin, can happen. But in every single circumstance, everyone was like, well, you can't trust Russia. They would never do that. Yes, let's appease the Russians. Okay, well, if that's if the opposite of appeasement is awarment, then you're just, going to continue pushing Ukrainians into the fucking meat grinder. I don't see you going out there to fight. Okay? That's it. Americans personally say openly, American representatives personally say openly, guess what, dude? Ukraine was phenomenal for us. For 5% of our military budget, we were able to cripple a foreign adversary's entire military. We were able to erode 50% of their fucking military without a single active U.S. service member dying in the process. I'd say that's a phenomenal investment. That is something that Elizabeth Warren has alluded to. That is something that Lindsey Graham has talked about. Okay? This is over. It's not like they're hiding it. They're openly saying it. They're openly flexing it. And the conversation is also ridiculous because guess what, dude? Here's the other side of the story, okay? You say backing off didn't work in 2014. Well, it worked in favor of not as many Ukrainians dying in that sense. Okay? If your goal is to hopefully to like stop the bleeding, and if your goal is to see what happens, giving peace a shot is always the best thing to do. People always go, oh, this is appeasement. This is appeasement. Russia is a Hitlerite nation. Okay, they're behaving like Adolf Hitler. They're behaving like Adolf Hitler. They're behaving like Adolf Hitler, and they must be met. Okay, go fight then. Then what you're supposed to do is like go full blown. If it's Adolf Hitler, then you should be America, right? The fuck are we doing? What's happening? Go full force. Why half measures? Or maybe in a post-nuclear Holocaust world that we live in, there are no more Adolf Hitlers in the same vein, and you can't really fucking fight against it in the same way. Like, do you understand? Do you get what I'm saying? What about statements by Ukrainian officials about an attack on Russia 4 months before the start of hostilities, threats of atomic weapons? NATO promises to set up combat posts on the borders with Russia, and NATO representatives ignoring an official letter from Russia to not make Ukraine a springboard for NATO. Yeah, I mean, I've talked about all of this stuff, okay? I've talked about all of this leading up to Russia's invasion. Russia's invasion of Ukraine completely fucking eviscerated that. Russia already maintained Crimea, okay? There was already LPR and DPR and the ongoing conflict there. This all rendered Ukraine's involvement with NATO to be an impossibility. So it was already like a Georgia style situation. Okay, it doesn't matter. Like none of this shit matters. Once they invaded, it was done. It was over. I'm Russian with Ukrainian relatives. The whole circus is just an incredible meat grinder of innocent people. Yeah, you can't join NATO with border disputes anyway. Like, I've talked about the Western world dangling NATO involvement with Ukraine. I've talked about the Western world and Western powers dangling NATO involvement with respect to Ukraine as a carrot in front of the Ukrainian government in a way to like put pressure on Russia, for example, and how fucked up that is. But once Russia actually ate the bait and legitimately invaded Ukraine, it's over. It's done. you have now legitimized NATO in 2024. It is the dumbest thing you can possibly fucking do. Like, it's always odd to me that a lot of people who love China also sometimes love Russia and Russian actions. They push Z, if you will. And what I never understand about those people is that, like, dude, even if you're like pro Russian dominance, so you like love Russia's irredentist actions or anything like that, like, this is a major misstep. Okay? This is a fucking, like, insane flub. It's not only super bloody and super violent. Okay? But it's also just completely unimaginably a bad idea. It was so bad it emboldened NATO's existence. It showed the other countries that Russia previously had like a handshake agreement on neutrality, like Finland and Sweden, that they could now join NATO. It was just, it was awful. It's so dumb. There is no way to try and justify this as an objective good. Okay? I think Russia knew all that, but Ukraine is much more important than Finland and Sweden because of Black Sea access. Yes, but there's a difference between Crimea and Eastern Ukrainian territories is what I mean. Okay? That's why I make this distinction all the time. Just like one that people get very, very mad at me about, but yeah, Ukraine's democracy in darkness. Oh God, they're back. Oh, here we go. They're gonna write the same fucking articles they wrote about how Zelensky is corrupt. And once again, now that like Ukraine is on the back burner. Okay. I think Russia had legitimate security concerns vis-a-vis NATO, but now no one's going to listen because they fucking invaded Ukraine. Yeah, I mean, it was over at that point, dude. There's nothing you can do. There's no rhyme or reason. It's not smart. It's not good. People can cope and try to be like, no, actually, like, Putin is a fucking chess master. Look at how much more territory it conquered. Oh, sick, dude. It's awesome. Yeah. It's a pretty insightful article. Yeah, I've read that article all the way from 2014 to 2018, exactly, as this chatter mentioned. I've read that exact same article so many fucking times over. Anyway. This whole meat grinder is a simple struggle between capitals for primacy in the Western European region. A huge amount of Ukraine's resources are exported by Western corporations worth hundreds of billions of dollars. There was a valid argument against NATO after what they did in Serbia against the wish of the UN. Now they gave NATO a valid boogeyman. Like, NATO has never really been a protective institution, okay? It had one purpose. And after the dissolution of the USSR, its purpose was supposed to be done, but the obvious purpose wasn't just to destroy communism globally, but it was also to maintain American capitalism as the dominant force. And we have done that, and we will continue doing that. The worst possible thing you can do is basically give credence to the idea that, like, it must exist as a defensive force. You know what I mean? How many NATO countries has Russia invaded? Would say it works out pretty good. Yeah, dude. That's why I always keep my elephant mace right next to me. After all, how many elephants are attacking me on a daily basis? 0. Like, get the fuck out of here. Yeah, NATO is so good. I love it. That's why, like, think about current Libya. What an awesome place. Thank God for NATO. Anyway. Libya is not in NATO. Don't be daft. Wait, what? That's so funny that you said Libya is not in NATO. I know. Yeah, Libya is not in NATO. There you go. No fly zone for Libya. Look how well that panned out. Anyway, as far as like talking about Ukraine and all this stuff, I don't know how the fuck I got here. I don't know how I got here. I don't know what I was talking about. The brain rottedness of defending NATO and they're actively perpetuating a genocide. I mean, hey, dude, tell them why Crimean independence was thwarted in 1992, 1994, and after by Ukraine and why it was legitimate. Debate lords derailed you. They want to avoid talking about Jover. Yeah. Well, Ukraine is also a bit, the responsibility of Jover too. Obviously, the major responsible party here is definitely. Oh, is there a time when military action is justified? Is how we got here. Thank you for keeping me on message and on point, Elite News. As far as Ukraine goes, I am an advocate for cessation of hostilities, just like the same principle holds for Palestine. Okay. We're not going to fully dive into all the things that are wrong historically with NATO, but beyond the couple different examples that I just mentioned here, as far as like military action goes, or as far as like what America could have done in Ukraine, we could have been a little bit more realistic with like what our genuine goals are. Okay. And pressured Ukrainian authorities to be like, listen, we have to very quickly nip this in the fucking bud. Bring together multiple countries from the European allegiance, from NATO countries, to the table alongside Ukraine as a representative of Ukraine. Bring China and Russia on the other side, and create terms and conditions for a manageable ceasefire. This was kind of initiated in Antalya, as I've talked about before, a couple months into the invasion. It fell apart. And since then, thousands more have died. And the meat grinder, obviously, Ukrainian civilians, but also certainly Russian conscripts and Ukrainian soldiers as well. And now that meat grinder is getting to a point where, there is not enough human beings to throw into that meat grinder on the Ukrainian side. Okay? Still, people in Ukraine are fighting against the Russian dictatorship. Why should they have to live under a dictator that has been killing them? Wait, what? I don't think they should. I don't know what you mean by this. I don't believe that at all. My point always has been, okay, if Russia doesn't abide by the standards of a ceasefire, you put forward conditions that are that have to be met. Okay? You continue with the fucking war. You continue backing Ukraine. That's what we've been doing since day one anyway. Why not see if there is a way to engage with Russia and implement a ceasefire? It makes no sense. Ukraine was not exactly in a good situation before the Russian invasion, and it's only gotten significantly worse. Okay? Thank you, Sean the Black, for your raid. Hope you had a good stream. And congratulations on getting nominated. Doubtful. Think Russia really wants to annex it, even though that is impossible? Okay, but if that's the case, then you just go back to step one that we're at already. Does that make sense? An international council has already been collected in 2014 in Minsk regarding Ukraine. Germany and France legitimized the agreement. Only then, in 2021, Merkel admitted that it was going to give the Ukrainians time to prepare for war with Russia. Okay, but what I have mentioned as far as the Minsk agreement is that there will come a day when we look back, okay, from the future. I don't know what Ukraine will look like at that point. I don't know what Russia will look like at that point. But we will look back at that and go, holy fuck. Imagine if we were able to force Ukraine and Russia to abide by the Minsk agreements. One or two, doesn't matter. Think about the unimaginable death toll and the destruction that one of Eastern Europe's poorest countries has withstood. That's it. And it's also odd that we have this conversation still. It's odd that we have these conversations still. By the way, Russia also did not abide by the agreements. Yes, I know. But you know who else didn't abide by the agreements? Fucking Ukraine. Like, that's what I'm saying. As long as Ukrainians are willing to fight, we should support them as much as we can. Okay, well, here's what's going to happen. It's already happening. What's going to happen is already happening. You're going to see less and less interest in Ukraine and less support for Ukraine. And Ukraine is going to go the way of the areas that are still controlled by the Western sphere of influence backed Ukrainian government are going to be picked apart piecemeal for Western capitalists. Okay. And sure, there will be some money opportunities there, but a tremendous amount of exploitation. And then the rest of it will be annexed by Russia in a permanent fucking war situation. That's what's going on right now. Do you think this is good? Like, it doesn't matter what we say and what we think in this situation. America's going to do what America does anyway. But if you want to hear what my perspective is on this matter, that's what I think. That's what I believe. I think that it's much better to have been as realistic with Ukraine right now as we are right now many fucking months ago. At which point, every single person that died in that time frame would not have fucking died. Okay? I agree with you, but if Ukrainians don't want that, what can we do? You have debated these folks. They will not move an inch. I know that. I understand that. So good luck to everybody, okay? That's it. If you ask my perspective, that's my perspective. If you are like, no, you don't understand, like, we have to abide by their interests because this is the moral position. Well, if it was about morality and if it was genuinely about killing Hitler, okay, if Putler is Hitler, then there would have been a fucking no-fly zone over Ukraine and nukes would be flying all over the place, okay? We're in a holding pattern as things get worse and worse every fucking day for Ukrainians as people basically forget about Ukraine altogether, partially because we are too busy funding a fucking genocide in Israel. One of the main issues on the other side in achieving a lasting ceasefire is also Russia and its objectives not being met, such as the full annexation of 4 oblasts, which is not currently achieved and which will mean they are not interested in a ceasefire anytime soon, as highlighted by Russian officials in the last few weeks. But I understand the logic. It's sad people brand you as a pro-Russia when you suggest such things. Yeah, it's just... ultimately, I think that... ultimately, no matter what our framework is here with Ukraine, Ukraine is going to go whichever way it's going. and America is going to offer less and less support as the posturing whittles away, and all of those pro-Ukrainian Andes, basically all those pro-Ukrainian Andes will slowly but surely take the Ukrainian flag out of their bios. It's already happened. 90% of fucking OSINT Twitter just like moved away from Ukraine almost entirely and moved into fucking Israel, Palestine, or fucking Venezuela for a little bit because they thought like Venezuela was going to invade Guyana or something. You know, they're just moving away. They're moving away from Ukraine. It's no longer the sexy thing to cover. It happened literally very publicly, okay? It happened in the most like in the wildest way possible. My point is almost every single thing that I've said with respect to Ukraine and Russia, with the exception of Russia will never invade Ukraine, that's a fucking insanely foolish choice, has been correct. And America is responding in the most predictable ways possible. This is how it always works. I was talking about the same thing in the beginning, how Ukraine was going to be bought up for pennies on the dollar, and domestic and foreign policy being dictated and trade policy dictated by America to Ukraine. The response, like I call the tanky and Votnik, whatever the F that means, law, and basically Zelensky was going to be used as a rag to wipe the blood off the new goodies. Sorry to put it that way, shaking my head. Don't you think we needed to weaken Russia and strengthen NATO as well as weaken Iran in preparation for our future looking at East as per new American military directives? What do you mean we? No, I don't think we need to weaken Russia and strengthen NATO and weaken Iran in preparation for our war with China. Okay? No, I don't think that at all. Everything you have said about Israel and Palestine has been correct? Yes. Everything, including J-dams. Everything. As an on-the-ground reporter, everything I've said has been true. I'm in Gaza right now. Anyway, is gooning the new meta? Gooning has been the old meta. Remember when they said you were lying and a misinformation agent for daring to say Israel bombed a single hospital that it had bombed 2 days prior? Yeah. Gooning is out, yapping is in, mewing is in. Putin has also said that they have no interest in a ceasefire now and that the war will be decided on the battlefield. Yeah. Sure. I don't know. I can't speak for Putin's aspirations, okay? But that shouldn't stop people from, or shouldn't stop governments from trying to manage the conflict in a way that is more positive, in a way that will avoid further deaths. That's my point. If that makes sense to you, I hope it does. Let's get back to Biden maxing. Did you start looks maxing? Absolutely not. Okay, let's do it. Biden is doing what is called conflict maxing. Okay, where in an election year, you choose to do as much damage as you possibly can to your own polls and to use like the resources that the American military has in opening up new avenues of conflict, hopefully to defend your important ally doing a genocide.
Asking him questions. What else did he say?
Well, Dana, President Biden and his national security team have really spent the past 2 days drilling down on the options available to him to respond to this attack, which left 3 U.S. service members dead. And he told me just a short while ago that he has, in fact, made that decision. Of course, officials say that the president really has been balancing 2 things when trying to find a way to respond. And that includes crafting a forceful response that would deter future attacks, but also preventing a wider regional conflict from erupting. That That is something that the president has made clear in his conversations as he is trying to figure out the way to respond. Now, the White House has yet to telegraph how and when the president and the United States will respond to these attacks. You have heard Secretary of State Antony Blinken saying that he expects it could be multi-leveled. It could go through phases and take quite a period of time to have these responses. But one thing that officials have made clear is that they do believe that any response would be more powerful than the retaliatory strikes the U.S. has been taking in the past against those Iranian-backed groups in Syria and Iraq. So far, the actions that the U.S. has taken have not deterred these attacks from being conducted. That is something I asked the president whether this time will be different, and he said, we'll see. Now, some of the options available to the president is potentially striking those groups again in Iraq and Syria, trying to target leadership, also potentially launching an offensive cyber attack. But one thing that officials have suggested is that it's unlikely the president will strike directly in Iran, which is something some of his Republican lawmakers up on Capitol Hill have been calling for. But it's clear that the president is facing a very fraught and challenging decision as he's trying to have this U.S. show of force while also preventing a wider conflict from erupting in the region.
Arlette, such important reporting and really the key question and the answer you got from the president that he has decided how he's going to respond. Thank you so much for that. Now let's go to CNN's Nick Robertson, who is in the region. He's in Tel Aviv. Nick, you have covered the Middle East for many years. Can you just put in context what is happening, what is about to happen? Of course, we're not just talking about where you are, well, Israel versus Hamas, but this broader situation and the potential for it to get even broader if and when the U.S. responds.
Well, Iran is backing so many different proxies in the region, and depending on how the United States strikes, and definitely there is pressure from many places in this region for the United States and President Biden to understand that the language that Iran will really understand best is a strong, robust military response. Iran's proxies are in Lebanon, they are in Syria, they are in Iraq, they are in Yemen, and they've all been militarily active, and they've all been militarily active against the United States and its allies, Israel included, in the region. And I think the stakes are incredibly high. Whatever option the president goes for, absolutely there will be a response, whether it comes direct back from the military in Iran, the IRGC, who just a couple of weeks ago we saw fire ballistic missiles into Syria, into Iraq, and a day later into Pakistan as well. They've shown that they're willing to flex their muscles, or whether the response comes from those proxies that are even more powerful in Iraq at the moment, those Iran-backed proxies in Iraq that are very powerful inside Iraq, are pressuring the government in Iraq to throw U.S. forces out of there. This is, I would say, whatever the president does, it is the beginning, it won't be the end, and it is, in essence, an escalation of a sequence of tit for tat. This will likely be big, however.
Yeah, I want you to listen, and our viewers to listen to how the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken assessed the situation.
This is an incredibly volatile time in the Middle East. I would argue that we've not seen a situation as dangerous as the one we're facing now across the region since at least 1973, and arguably even before that.
As any Secretary of State does, he really chooses his words quite carefully. He wanted to not only send a message to people in the region, maybe even people back home. What is your assessment of that very, very strong, direct statement from Antony Blinken?
Again, it's something that's shared in this region here as well, that everything is slowly escalating. The anger in the region about what people see happening in Gaza has escalated tensions there. The effort for a ceasefire is underway, but the northern border here in Israel, Hezbollah and the IDF on that border have increasing strikes at each other. The tension is there. Israel has unannounced and unclaimed strikes into Syria, the potential for a very big escalation, it really exists, and it would come down to a misinterpretation or an overstep by any one of Iran's proxies.
Nick, thank you so much. It's so important to have you there to give us your reporting, but also your historical context. Thank you, Nick. I want to bring in my great panel to talk about all of these challenges that President Biden is facing in the Middle East and elsewhere. CNN's Jeff Zeleny, Sungmin Kim from the Associated Press, and Aaron Blake from the Washington Post. I've been saying this morning, I've been sort of tweaking the famous Donald Rumsfeld line that you go to an election with the world that you have when you're president, not the world that you want.
Right.
And this is not the world that any president wants, but particularly one in the middle of an election year.
Without question. And look, I think, as you said, this is going to be a decision that is remembered without a doubt. I mean, look, if you look at the sort of the arc of Joe Biden's policy view, I mean, he has long been very skeptical about the U.S. involvement in Iraq and the Middle East, much more so than a few of his predecessors, actually. But look, now this is what he has dealt. So he said, I don't think we need a wider war in the Middle East. That's not what I'm looking for. It's not what he's looking for, but he also...
Yeah. He just can't control it, though. Okay. I mean, we constantly talk about Iranian proxies. Israel is America's proxy. What do you mean you can't control it? You can. You absolutely can. It's just, oh God. It is completely ridiculous. Is Biden LBJ maxing? A little bit. He's just war maxing. That's what he's doing.
Can't control what is about to happen. And someone asked a question in the briefing yesterday.
Have you seen the blast crater of a 500-pound JDAM? If not, you should compare that to the hospital blast. Brother, I was joking.
Really...
I think you're stuck. I like, before we saw the impact crater, I said it was. And then as soon as we saw the impact crater, I was like, yeah, I was wrong. Are you mobile? Are you still back in like the El Ahly hospital era? What's going on? Are you good? Do you know how many fucking missiles Israel has dumped on top of Gaza since then? They've shut down almost every hospital with the exception of 2 who only have operational capacity, but just like incredibly limited. Okay. Israel is a sovereign nation. It may have similarities to proxies, but America does not have outright control. It's more like North Korea and China than Hamas and Iran. Wait, what? No, it's not. No, Israel, when you are America, entire nations are your proxies in the same exact way that Iran has control over Hamas. Saying Israel's not a proxy is so funny. Israel's not a proxy because Israel is a state. Okay, not a sovereign state. America's state. It's another state in the United States of America.
Touched off John Kirby, who said he's not doing this because of polling. I think that's likely true because the political fallout of this is very dangerous for President Biden among his Democratic coalition, which is really fraying in some regards to what's happened in the Middle East. So,
like every day there's another article about. Every day there's another article where it's like, what? Literally mentioned the JDAM in order to deny the other chatter's assertion that you only had good takes on Israel. Yeah, I still have good takes on Israel. Okay. 100%. And the hilarious part about this process is that like, because they have no interest in the conflict whatsoever, because they have no interest in the genocide or want to like desperately defend their position in it. They just turn around and they're like, oh, well, remember when you thought before seeing the impact crater that one was a JDAM from the audio signature? And turns out it was like not. Okay, fine. Sure. Your takes on Israel are bad, actually. Thank you. I agree. My takes on the top of the hour ad break are good, though. Okay. Right? Stop trying to debate me with this, okay? Stop trying to get me on this and then try to fucking sneak in a top of the hour ad break debate. Don't do it. It's the reverse Gish Gallop. New innuendo talks about it. Sure, we'll watch it. You spent like 8 whole seconds thinking it was a JDAM and immediately followed up with, I could be wrong. I know, but it doesn't matter because the 8 seconds is what's important. Okay? As a Palestinian embroiled in this since I was a child, I agree with 99.9% of your takes. You have good takes. Yeah, except as a Palestinian who's embroiled in this since you were a child, your opinion is completely unimportant in this process when we're talking about a group of individuals having a back and forth over Israel that are just like white boys who are quirked up from Iowa, okay? That's the issue. You know? The real issue, though, is that those quirked up Iowa boys are going to absolutely see the top of the hour ad break right now, unless they subscribe for $5 or for free, or by getting gifted a sub. Here's the streaming ad break now. Yes, we're going to talk about Israel dressing up as medics. Okay, don't worry. I'm from Illinois. Get it right. That's what I mean. It's like these guys don't actually care about any of the stuff. They just think like Hasan bad, and this is a good opportunity to fucking go and annoy him in his chat. And I think at a more emotional time when I was like genuinely losing my mind over it, I would respond a lot more to it and I fed into it. But right now it's just like, whatever. I don't give a shit. I'll joke about it. I'll meme about it all day. What about the pictures of the Hamas command and control center under the cemetery Israel defaced? What? Fetterman divorce arc. Okay, stop sending me Schizarella videos or posts. They're all fake. Even though you were giving analysis from the circumstantial evidence that you had, you were spot on and the same as many analysts at the time, but there's a double standard for you because motherfuckers have to maintain their viewership. Yeah, exactly. But who cares? Notice how like let me tell you something. If someone's only opinion on Gaza was like what some YouTuber said or what some Twitcher said about Gaza one time and nothing else, okay, then they don't give a fuck about anything. They only give a fuck about making content and driving clicks. If you are confused by this, or if you think that that person is being genuine and they're making a real fucking statement about like ethics in like Twitch journalism or some shit, you are exactly the type of clown ass that fed into the Gamergate stuff back in the day because Gamergate was actually about like ethics in video game journalism and not about like harassing women in the space or something, even though some of them were fucking annoying, right? Saying like the some of the content creators in that space. Nowhere near as annoying as, of course, the Gamergate Andes themselves. So, you know, they should check out the CNN video showing the entrance of that tunnel wasn't even under the cemetery. Yeah, I don't. Bad example. Gamers Gators made the same woman-hating video hundreds of times. Yeah, obviously there is misogyny is like significantly more popular of a vein to exploit than fucking saying, I hate this one random Twitch streamer. Dummy. Yes, I cannot invoke enough hatred that like I create a Gamergate that is like the fuck Hasan Gate as a standalone concept. Now, there are certain aspects that are fresh. Islamophobia, for example. And that is definitely one angle that a lot of people are using, or anti-Semitism socialist, anti-communist sentiment. That's another angle that like keeps it alive. But how the fuck do you not know about the cemetery being dug up and IDF barring the reporters from entering to confirm if it was actually hiding a tunnel? No, I saw it. I didn't understand why that chatter was so, why that chatter was talking about that definitely had a command center under the cemetery. Because the only thing I saw from it was that there was like reporters and they just refused to let the reporters in. Anyway, let's continue.
This is why the power of incumbency is strong and beneficial in some respects. In other respects, it's not.
Let's dig into the pressure points that he is feeling, not just politically, but also obviously militarily. And you're right, John Kirby was very intent on saying that we're going to focus on what's important geopolitically and not what's happening here in his reelection. Mikey Sherrill, she's a Democrat from New Jersey. She was a Navy helicopter pilot. She graduated from Annapolis. Listen to what she said on CNN this morning.
You know, sure, it feels good. It feels macho to say that we are going to destroy our enemies. But at this time, what the United States often does best is not simply go in half-cocked. What we are trying to do here is to prevent a full-scale war. We are trying to deter this aggression.
Right. That's sort of the message that the White House is trying to send. But when you were talking about just the pressures that are on President Biden right now in an election year with this growing conflict in the Middle East, I'm just struck by where all the different political pressure points are coming from, because you do have a very vocal contingent of Republicans saying you have to strike Iran, hit them hard, Lindsey Graham being one of them. And obviously his likely general election opponent, Donald Trump, already deriding him as weak on Iran. But then you have a growing number of his progressive base who are really upset and protesting him everywhere he goes because of the war in Gaza. And this is what they warn of over and over, that we don't want a broader conflict in the Middle East. And then you have another groups, who would otherwise could be supportive of the president's actions, but they're really worried and increasingly concerned about the unilateral actions that he's taking. He's saying that he needs congressional authorizations for the moves that he's taking. So